Welcome to the Just Heat Pumps podcast. I'm Aaron,
I'm Xerxes.
and today we're going to continue our DIY or pro. Do you install your own heat pump or do you have a pro do it? And this is the third video slash podcast in the series. And we're excited to talk today about the pros of having a professional installer install your heat pump. Isn't that right?
Pros for pro.
Yeah, we've got a good list here in no particular order, so stay tuned till the end. But we've got a number of pros to go through. And to start it off, how about we kick it off with the first one here? We've got fast and efficient installation.
You got that right. And when we discussed how homeowners may want to DIY it, we talked about how much time it may take, especially with all the learning and such. So oftentimes we'll install systems very quickly. And if you have a complicated install with some challenging, say, exterior wall penetrations or line set runs, those can be real headaches for a DIY project. And that's a great reason to bring in a professional team that has seen it so many times and understands how to go around joists and what the code requirements are, and it ends up being a very fast and efficient installation, especially relative to, doing all the heavy lifting yourself. And so it ends up being a real time saver to go with a pro.
For sure. And on average, I mean, a good heat pump installation could or should take about 2 to 3 days, right? Bigger projects with multiple systems can take up to a week, and that's with a team of pros doing it. So with DIY, it can be double or triple that, as we talked about in the previous video. I think one thing I want to ask about or touch on is even if you're using a pro, an install can be too fast. Isn't that right?
Yeah, yeah, you do want to watch out. Many manuals, installation manuals, state that an overnight pressure test, for example, is best practice. That's something that we do. We're not aware of any other companies in the area that are doing overnight pressure tests, and so it's a significant addition in terms of cost to have that done, but it's also a significant benefit to the longevity of the system to guarantee there are no leaks when you start, when you have, say, 10 times longer pressure test at high pressure. As a DIY, you might not have the gear or the wherewithal to run a pressure test with all digital equipment. And so that is another good example of hiring a pro. Many teams who would choose to install very quickly, and some may cut corners, such as a long pressure test, I just highly recommend against. And so if you are going the pro route, certainly check for how long they will run their pressure test, and they should be able to certify that with real measurements and reporting.
Yep. Agree. Agree. So the next one we have on the list here is about risk. Who takes on this risk, including liability, injury? There's some more things there, but what do you think about this one?
There's several points of risk. One is damage to the home. And so if you're DIY, you may want to get it permitted with local jurisdiction so that it is defensible to an insurance company if there's any damage done to your home, especially if there's any type of condensation damage or water damage long term, if you drill through the wrong part of your house. But the risk for a professional who's insured, is permitted, and doing quality work is taken on by the company. And so if something does go wrong, you can just say, hey, fix it, and you're not up the creek. So that tends to be a better scenario when you have a legitimate business performing complicated home changes or additions or modifications, and they have the wherewithal to repair or address any challenges that show up. What do you think about the insurance or on the inspection side?
Yeah, I think for a homeowner, I'll touch on insurance to start with. Don't be afraid to ask for the certificate. of insurance and make sure it's valid and up to date from the contractor, because you could talk to contractors and handymen to have work done and everyone's like, yeah, yeah, I'm insured, but don't be afraid to ask for the certificate. At least here in Denver, and we as heat pump installers and all the local rebate programs, they require us to have a minimum $1 million general liability policy, if not 2 million, and then some other verifications on that too. So check with the programs, in particular the rebate programs as well, because if the company is in that program, they've met insurance requirements as well. In terms of actual liability, fully agree that, I don't know if homeowners insurance is going to cover anything if you say I tried to, install this heat pump and you're puncturing water lines, through the wall and other things, as you mentioned. So something to certainly be aware of there. In terms of permitting, absolutely. I think we talked about it on the last video. If you don't have permits, that's a perfect reason for insurance companies to deny you any coverage at all, because it wasn't done by a professional. I guess more specifically, a licensed professional.
A little bit of a tangent, but related to avoiding hiring a pro that maybe isn't insured. I've gone down that road, and with some tree work I had in the front yard, and I got a great price. I did shop around, and they started work. They started cutting down the trees, and then all of a sudden, the code enforcement shows up and says stop work. Like
Mhm.
it was within, say, an hour. And turns out the other contractor that I called lived just a block away, heard the saws, called it in, sabotaged,
Ooh.
and so there was some contractor kind of turf war happening in my front yard. And so, in order to get the work done and, well, have him, obviously he wanted to get paid, he had to go get licensed and show his insurance. And the funny thing is I asked him directly, and I trusted his word, and I looked him right in the eye, and he looked me in the eye. I said, "Are you insured and licensed in our city?" And he said, "Yes."
Hmm.
Maybe I should have noticed the shifty eye, but it turned out to be a lie. And I mean, thankfully he worked through it. But it was, yeah, like you said, yeah, let's show it to me. Show me your insurance. There it is. Great. And then you can move on. It is a perfectly legitimate thing to ask for.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The next item on the list we have is environmental impact, handling refrigerant to care for the environment. And this is a whole other rabbit hole we could go down on this one. But what do you think?
Yeah, that goes in the risk category. And so handling refrigerants, by law, it's required to have EPA 608, which is the test that they administer to handle refrigerants. And this is one, a safety issue. High pressure refrigerants can cause, bodily harm, and they can cause frostbite if you're, unscrewing a valve, or it releases on your hand and you don't have protection or you're not used to that. And the environmental risk is very significant. There's enough refrigerant in your typical air conditioner, your typical heat pump, to produce emissions equivalent to driving your automobile for a full year. So in just, with one slip, and within a minute you can create a whole year's worth of emissions in your own backyard. So that's one of the biggest risks, and a reason to have a professional do that installation. And that's something to consider, is that environmental impact, especially if you're installing a heat pump because you care about the environment. Be absolutely certain how to handle refrigerants and avoid environmental release. It's a big thing that we do. Is anytime we remove an old air conditioner, is we recover it into a tank, and then we deliver that to a reclamation and recycling facility so that it can be made new again and kept out of the environment. A lot of times an installer can save a lot of time by just keeping the refrigerant and pulling it all into the compressor and then dropping that off at the metal recycling facility. A lot of times that refrigerant is not handled appropriately. So it's something we pride ourselves in. I always record how much refrigerant we're we're pulling in. It's our, the R22, the ozone depleting, or R410A, which is, a major greenhouse gas. Those refrigerants are very important to keep out of the atmosphere.
Definitely, and I think the fine from the EPA is it still $10,000 if you get caught releasing refrigerant into the air, and they encourage tattletaling basically
Yeah,
if they catch HVAC techs doing it for the EPA 608. I remember a quick story too. We were sitting at the Excel Energy rebate seminar, training seminar about I think a year ago. We were sitting there with a veteran HVAC installer. He's been in the business for decades, and he just I won't name names, but he turned to me and he said, this is all this heat pump stuff, this cold climate heat pump stuff. It's all new to me. We just used to swap out the boxes and the ACs and release the R22 into the atmosphere and go to lunch and come back and then take it out. Yeah,
yeah.
that's how a lot of people used to do it. But
We've met a lot of people now that, yeah, that was common practice, or that they worked in a company where releasing the refrigerant is common practice. Really, really big no-no.
yep.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's not a lot of tattletaling going on.
Yeah, we don't know. There could be, but great. So next up, we've got quality of installation. A professional job will look more polished, run more efficiently, longer. Lots of benefits there.
This is our wheelhouse. This is what we care most about, is that quality installation, that you get the most life out of the equipment if you install it very well. If you cut any corners, if you don't do a triple evacuation with nitrogen purge between evacuations, the leak test, the rise test, everything related to the refrigerant line and the refrigerant circuit, it's a big deal. It's a big deal, especially with airflow, another one. So everything, it culminates into a long life for the heat pump if it's a quality installation. And that's one of the challenges when you DIY. I think I mentioned it in our first discussion on this series that my first DIY is not something that I would do now. I
Mm,
think it's probably going to last a long time because I want it to kind of want to evolve, but it's out there. It's a tank, and it is not the most aesthetically appealing. And there's some of the challenges that I ran into with the line set run and the interior connections and where I put the hole penetration that I would not do again. So all that learning culminates into a professional installation, someone who's done it hundreds of times and understands how the unit will perform 5 years from now, 10 years, and 20 years. And that's what you want. You want long lifespan out of your heat pump. And the best way to do that is to hire a pro.
yes, and you'll see a common term or statistic thrown around online, but it basically says 90% of the issues you're going to have into the future result from poor installation quality.
Yeah,
Something in that bucket that happens during the initial installation.
yeah. And the other 10% are bad design.
Yeah, design comes before installation for sure.
Yeah, the design is another component. I mean, that we need to add to the list, and that's the getting the right heat pump for the space, avoiding oversizing or undersizing, so you're not kind of stressing the equipment that's maybe too big for the space, and you're not cold if the equipment's too small for the space. Just having it be that Goldilocks design that fits perfectly for your goals.
Absolutely. So we've got brand and warranty support as another point here to work with a pro installer. Lots here, and for me, my thought process also went into marketing. A lot of brands use this one as a marketing tool. When you're sitting across from homeowners in their house. So I've got some thoughts on there. But what do you think about brand and warranty support?
We're trying to get warranty support on Amazon with some major equipment. They might know what's ahead. For us as professional installers, we choose top of the line brands that we have very warranty demand, right? So that's first off, just avoiding those budget equipment that are so cheap, it's unbelievable because there's not going to be any warranty support there. And then also say that if there is an issue, we take a phone call, we talk it through with our customer, or we get automatically informed through the smart software on the installations that we do. And that allows us to address any problems very quickly and show up and fix it in a very quick way. So we have a number of warranties that happen not related to equipment, but related to peripherals such as thermostats or pumps, and we'll swap some oftentimes swap it out same day, able
Mhm.
to collect that equipment, swap it out, and there's no issue. And sometimes there's lingering issues, like they're just quirky, like the clock might keep resetting or the schedule can have an issue, and that we found relates to certain power cycling mistakes, or I would say bugs in the process, and so we avoid those consistently now. But warranty and support is a huge factor in professional installation. It might be for some people one of the biggest factor to just have it installed and then never worry about it. If there's ever an issue, they send a text or make a call and then it's fixed. That's what warranty support is and should be.
Yes, and for the homeowner listening, a few other dimensions here. For instance, if you're going to DIY or get your own equipment, make sure that, like if you're buying online or from an e-commerce company, check on the warranty given from that manufacturer that you're buying of the equipment, because in a lot of cases, if you buy on e-commerce sites or do not have it installed by a trained pro in their dealer program, you're not going to get a warranty. and
Yeah.
and so for anyone looking to DIY, make sure to check on that. When you see a number of different proposals by professional installers, you'll see different warranty periods. So just to break them up really quick, usually there's a labor or maintenance component to it done by the company, the installer itself, and that's through their company, not necessarily the manufacturer. Then you have, anywhere from 8 to 12 years on parts and components. So be sure to read the warranty
Mhm.
documentation, because that there are different warranty periods for different components in the system in a lot of cases. And then also through the dealer programs, like if you see on proposals 12-year extended warranties or 10-year extended warranties, if done by a quote unquote pro installer doing your heat pump, that means basically in most cases, most manufacturers, that they've done enough systems to add up to enough points to be considered a pro dealer within that program. And a lot of the manufacturers treat the dealer programs, in our case, as installers, they treat that the same way. They usually have a minimum threshold. So none of that inherently means you're going to get a more quality installation from one person or another, other than they've done it a number of times to be able to offer an extended warranty. So more component. That's what I mean also by the marketing component brought in when you're looking at quotes from different, not only installers but from the manufacturers.
And just to give you a clear example of what you're saying, Aaron, my DIY heat pump I put in first, I got a 5-year warranty. If you read
Mhm.
the details of what's necessary, basically any heat pumps we install now, we get 12-year warranties from the manufacturer. So really big difference in warranty and brand support if you're DIY versus professional.
Yep. And then the last thought there too is service and maintenance plans offered by the installation companies is yet another separate component of sort of warranty and coverage on the system. So that could be a whole other video in itself. We'll leave it for that
Yeah,
one.
continued support. That makes sense.
Continued support, absolutely. So next up, we've got permits and building code knowledge.
Yep. That's a big part of the professional installation. The building code knowledge the knowledge of just building structure, where and how to drill exterior penetrations, what type of cladding to wrap around electrical wire to avoid issues with running, unprotected wire in your home, within your walls, dealing with any type of water, avoiding water damage with correct design and installation, all following the code. I just recently renewed my master mechanical code through examination yesterday, and it's nothing like sitting down for 4.5 hours to make sure you're not gonna screw people's homes up, and it's really necessary to do. So anytime that we apply for a permit, we also are licensed, right? And that licensure in any jurisdiction typically requires demonstration of skills and competency in building, in HVAC, and in code. And so all of that culminates to not just, obtaining the permit, hey, we got a permit, but also the knowledge behind the ability to get a professional licensed insured permit delivered, and then the inspection at the end. So all of that comes together to really just support that quality installation and backs it up on paper with professional international building code licensure and permitting.
Sure. And we touched on this in the previous video a bit, but you've got a lot of different components of building and trades. You've got plumbing and drains, and you need to route water. You have high voltage electricity, 240-volt systems here that you really don't want to mess around with any of this. So a good knowledge of the code and permits is pretty pertinent. And with that
Mhm.
goes along with the specialized tools and the learning curve that it takes to use these properly and safely, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
This is a big deal. When I had looked into and pursued DIY heat pump in my home, I had to budget at least $5,000 in tools. And that was, above and beyond the equipment itself. And I was already motivated thinking about just heat pumps, the business, and actually had already pursued that. So it was already kind of on my mind. All right, this is an investment. I will use these tools more than once, and that kind of tipped the scale for me to make that purchase. I would say that a professional installation crew will show up to your house with about $50,000 worth of gear and extra supplies and everything that's needed on the truck. If they encounter an issue, better high quality tools to make sure that they're not using the wrong tools to try and get a job done, avoiding cutting corners, and just making a really clean and efficient and as quick as possible installation in your home. And so the tools are significant. As far as beyond the price of them is learning how to use them. So learning how to do a proper flare connection. You do it a few times before you make the final one, and watch, several videos on how that goes. The torque wrench specifications, not bending the coil pipe that's sticking out of the unit. And what else? Gosh, there's so many tools that you have to learn and be really comfortable with in order to do it. In addition to the vacuum pump, nitrogen regulator, high pressure nitrogen tanks, all the hoses and valving going to those in order to, basically, so you're evacuating and purging with nitrogen, really cleaning the system out of any water vapor. And just that kind of how the whole thing, you start at the beginning and you've got a good process as a professional where you have to get this one step done to move on to the next step. And so you're not kind of juggling tools and spreading out in a haphazard way as you're installing. And that's an important thing to consider for hiring a pro, is buying and learning a seriously large number of tools that maybe you use once, maybe use twice, but yeah, that's a big deal.
Definitely. And another topic that we had here was a pro install can be much more, or at least more energy efficient over the long haul than a
Mm.
DIY installation, right? Um,
Yep.
and how so?
Okay, so some mistakes that one DIYer or anyone might make if they're not, say, experienced or kind of knowledgeable in all the steps would be one, inappropriate or avoiding evacuation. That's a typical one that we find. We get phone calls, say, hey, I had this installed, my friend did it. It's not running very well. And so if you don't evacuate all the non-condensable, which would be, the water and air vapor that's in the refrigerant lines and in the heat exchanger, the coils, before you release the refrigerant, then you have a pure refrigerant, and then its heat exchanger or its, evaporative and condensing properties, all of its thermodynamic properties change and are no longer what the system needs. So there's a huge efficiency loss if you avoid or skip the evacuation process. That's a big efficiency hit. In addition, it reduces the lifetime of the unit. So water vapor it'll react over time with the oil in the refrigerant to form acidic compounds. And those acidic compounds will etch and eat and corrode internal parts of your system, including the compressor. That's going to reduce the lifetime of the unit. And so instead of 20 years or 15 years, you might get 3 or 7. And that's inherently inefficient to not get maximum lifetime out of the unit. So there's energy efficiency, there's shorter lifetime, and that's just the refrigerant circuit. There's a lot of other ways to damage that full circuit as well, which now that I'm talking about it, maybe we make a whole podcast on that, but it's a little bit tech focused. And so, yes, I mean,
Mhm.
the refrigerant system, just even, folks that take a shortcut and don't clean out all the metal shavings when they're cleaning the refrigerant lines, those particles go into the compressor and just grind it up over time. We've had some autopsies. Certain companies will not directly warranty compressors because of how many of them get returned with metal shavings in there, and that's just a red flag that someone skipped some important steps when they were commissioning and installing the unit. And so that's something we avoid every time. We're always cleaning out those lines of debris, of anything that could damage or reduce lifetime or reduce efficiency. So there's
Sure.
those factors
Mhm.
among a longer list.
Yeah, I get a couple others just kind of thinking about you could, if you try to reuse the old line sets and you don't clean those out properly, that can be a pretty nasty process to
Mm,
try to make old 20-year-old copper lines new again with, basically new spec for new refrigerant. Also, I could picture if you essentially skip the step of measuring or charging the system correctly. Let's say you need 25 feet of refrigerant in there per the manufacturer calculations, and it comes with 15 feet of it, and you say, "Oh, we're good here," so it'll be inefficient forever, not having the right refrigerant charge. I mean, the list goes on, like you said,
yeah, we've
and
gotten calls in every one of these categories. Hey, we had this heat pump installed and X appears to not work correctly.
yeah.
So, yeah, we see a lot.
Great. And that dovetails back to the sort of warranty and insurances and having the system run correctly as well. So
Yeah,
if the installer is in the dealer program or quote unquote pro installer with the manufacturer you're going with, there hopefully is a better chance that they've done it right and they've received the proper training.
absolutely.
And with that, for pro install, we could talk about home resale value, where a
Mm,
professional installs a system at your home. It looks good, it's permitted, and whether you're living in there for a long time or you're about to sell it, we could talk about pros of that.
yeah, and depending on who you talk to, a heat pump will either increase or decrease the value of your home, but
Mhm.
I personally believe that it increases the value of a home. I have not seen enough statistics on that. It's I think it adds comfort and it adds a lot of comfort to your home when it's uniformly warmed or cooled. It's designed and matched well. It runs efficiently, and and it helps balance humidity levels as well. I think it adds a significant amount of value to your home to have it professionally installed and to provide an invoice, or to at least show the invoice or the permit and the inspection passing when you sell the home. We have seen, or we had several customers who are considering selling their home in the next decade and realize that the old HVAC system is going to need to be replaced. And if they're going to replace it, they're going to enjoy it for the next few years rather than just buy it for the next homeowner. And
Mhm.
that's a big factor that we've seen play into a decision to have a professional install. Compared to a DIY install, it actually looks aesthetically better. And one of our inspectors actually commented, "Hey, this looks like a Cadillac installation that you have here. Maybe you should do my house too." And that's just such a great compliment and affirmation of the high quality work that we're doing. I think, Aaron, perhaps you as having rental properties and been in real estate, I've only had one home and I'm still in it. So I mean, I think it added value, but I haven't assessed it anytime recently. I want my taxes to stay low.
Well, I found it's a very personal decision on what you've, or kind of frame of reference on what you might value a home at, and I can see it as a homeowner, and I've also done, as you said, rental properties through COVID times. I renovated net zero homes in Florida, where I did a couple of these where it was fully net zero, electric only, solar powered the whole home and the EV 100%. And I lived in it, renovated it. Crazy projects, right? A lot of DIY. I didn't do DIY the air conditioning system and the heating system, but everything was electric. What I found from a rental property perspective was when you package it up and you can essentially sell it as a net zero home, fully electric, no gas, basically no energy bill other than the net metering hookup fee. I mean, they rented in like a day. It was just the nicest tenants. They were looking for that, the EV charger, somewhere to plug in their electric car. And it was a really pleasant experience being a landlord with those kind of properties. And this is similar. It depends on the location where you are. You can look up national studies related to solar because it has a much bigger and longer track record than, I think, heat pumps and the studies around it regarding home value. But you could look up online, solar on average, averages 4% increase in home value. And that totally it's like a hyper local number based on the general kind of climate, physically and perceptively, of the area where you are. So heat pumps, if you have, again, from an investor perspective, if you're selling a home where the goal is really net zero and all electric, and we're in Denver, where a lot of people care about getting gas out of their home and air quality, and they have EVs, and they really care about the environment and this kind of stuff. That's real value. So when you have a perspective, and then the real health benefits, right? Home value. There's no more maintenance with these than any other regular system. We're removing furnaces and gas appliances, so you have one electric system versus one electric plus gas system. It could go on for a long time with the home value, but again, I'll come back to, it's really the perception of whoever might be buying it or living in it at the end of the day.
That makes sense.
Great. And then next topic, we're getting to the end here, but we talk about support network and who you have or who you can go to if you need real help with your system.
Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on this with the warranty and ongoing support, but having a professional who did the installation, they're going to be able to answer questions, how to run it most efficiently, how to lower your energy bills, what it's like to live with a heat pump, how you can avoid some kind of costs heat strip backup on the coldest nights with certain just approaches on how you run it. And then the other big thing about the support you get from a professional installation is really predicated upon their longevity, right? Their investment in the community that they're going to be here to stay. And that's something you really want to look into and just make sure you have a conversation with your installation team and say, hey, let's make this permanent, right? If I call you in 10 years, if there's an issue, I'd love for you to come and fix it, because hunting around for a new service team can be really challenging. I had zero luck when the heat pump on my home went down, and I brought out four different technicians, and each one of them failed at understanding what the problem was, diagnosing it, and certainly unable to repair it. And it just blew my mind that heat pumps are still new enough in the community that you really have to choose a professional installation outfit or company that can really address some of the nuances in troubleshooting heat pump technologies.
Sure. And oftentimes when you need that help, the weather is extreme and it's really hard to get somebody out to your home. It's either really hot in the summer, 98
Yeah.
degrees, 100 degrees out, or it's -5 and you're
Mm,
freezing.
yeah,
So and
that was my case.
everyone in heat pumps and HVAC is really busy when that
Everyone in the
happens.
house was grumpy and hot.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
that motivated me to, yeah, repair it myself as well.
Yep, and great. So, and then we'll wrap it up with the last one here, and it segues right into it, which is just knowing the job's done right and having the peace of mind that you can move on in life, knowing that it should be working correctly for a very long time, and you do have that support.
Yeah, peace of mind, resting easy, and being able to just enjoy your home without having that lingering project
Mhm.
that just maybe is 90% done. It's probably working, but that last 10% is just, just I'll do that later. And then many of my DIY projects are 90% finished. I don't know why, but that's how it went. And as a professional, it's 100% complete. And that is a real peace of mind, period, on the installation, on the professional installation, is it's completely done 100%, and you get to just use it and enjoy it. And that's a big factor in that kind of peace of mind, rest assured, rest easy approach to life that so many of us, when we're stressed, we would just love to not be stressed about one of those things, and a DIY project can be one of those things. And so, like you said, bringing it back to our starting points here, on DIY and professional, it comes with a higher price tag just by nature, but it's done right, it's complete, and it's really a valuable addition to your home. And so that's one thing that just kind of generates all that peace of mind, like you had said.
Definitely. That is our list of reasons to go pro with your heat pump. And we'll do one more video in the series here coming up next, and where we just weigh the differences and kind of do a summary on DIY or pro your heat pump install.
Yeah, we've got a nice long checklist for part 4 to sum it all up, and I'm so excited to talk about it.
Great. Well, thanks for the time, and that'll be coming up next.
Thank you.
Thanks.